behind the anchor desk on the Today Show set. Matt and Ann can't do it forever. We need a little bit of help at some point. We hope that you guys will join us a little bit later this afternoon for more of our Innovation Challenge. We'll see you then. Thanks very much. Good stuff.
Who says that CBS has got a quarter on The Amazing Race? We've got our own going on here on Education Nation. I'm joined now by Sal Khan, who in fact is one of the leading innovators in the country, but kind of stumbled into it. You were a computer science enthusiast.
Yes.
You got into the venture capital business.
Yes.
But you had a niece across the country who was having some difficulties doing her math. What happened then?
Yeah, it was 2004. They were visiting me right after my wedding, and it just turned out that it came out while we were just talking about it that she was getting tracked into a slower math class when she was going into 7th grade right after the summer. And I talked to her, I said, Nadia, you're clearly a bright girl, and we share a certain amount of DNA. There's no way that you should be tracked into a slower math class. And so she agreed that we would tutor each other, or I would tutor her when she went back to New Orleans.
Where was she living and where were you living at the time?
She was based in New Orleans, which is where I grew up, but I was in Boston at the time. And so we agreed she would go home and we would get on a conference call or we'd figure out something. And I used Yahoo Doodle to tutor her. And a couple of months later, that worked out. Then I started tutoring her brothers, a couple of other cousins. The whole time I still had a day job. And about a year later, it just became hard for me to scale myself. I had trouble scheduling with all my different cousins and family friends and all the rest. And I had a buddy who I was talking to over dinner, and I said, I'm really enjoying this tutoring thing that I do after work, but it's getting difficult. And he's like, well, why don't you just record your lectures and put them on YouTube? And I said, no, YouTube's for dogs on skateboards. It's not for serious mathematics. But I tried it out, and long story short, my cousin said that they liked me better on YouTube than in person, and other people did too, and they just kept watching. And so now it's about 2.5 million people a month are watching the videos.
And you've got about 2,200 videos that are in play.
It's now pushing 2,800 videos on everything from basic addition to vector calculus and biology and chemistry and whatever else.
Is this a commercial enterprise, or are you doing this just to keep the country better informed?
No, and a lot of my buddies from the very for-profit investment world are wondering what happened to Sal, but I decided to make it a not-for-profit, and the real idea is that, the fun of this is that it reaches as many students as possible. So, when I'm on my deathbed, I want, it'd be nice, in a for-profit realm, a big success would have been you IPO or you get acquired, but here the big success is it can reach millions and millions of kids, so it's pretty exciting.
What's the appetite for learning that you're finding from this generation, especially in the difficult sciences like math, because we know we're behind in this country?
The really surprising thing is my cousins were fairly motivated students. They were having trouble, but I was helping them. And when I made the videos, I assumed that they would be that the appeal would be for people like my cousin or maybe people like myself. I was a pretty good student when I was in middle school and all the rest. But the really big surprise, the letters I get are from students who a lot of us would have traditionally labeled as the disengaged students. The students who said, I was about to fail out of algebra, I was about to drop out of high school until I found this type of a resource. And the big message to me is that it's actually a much larger group of students who really, really want to learn, and you just have to give them an outlet so they're not frustrated, so they don't feel like they're being talked down to. And if you give them that, it's not just the 5 or 10% of students who want to learn, it's the 90-95%.
Sal, we were in the preceding panels, as you know, we talked a lot about poverty, socioeconomic deprivation, people not having access to the internet. So are you talking effectively to those who are privileged or in the, if not elite class, it's certainly in the middle to upper middle class?
We're across the board. I mean, we've seen clearly. I think the main barrier here is that there is some type of internet connectivity that someone needs to do. But people are already taking our videos. They're being translated into 11 languages. They're putting them on DVDs. I've gotten pictures of people using them in rural Africa and rural India. So even now, it can be accessed by people anywhere. And then as we go forward, the cost of technology is just getting cheaper and cheaper. And I think, I think there's some healthy skepticism around technology in the classroom or technology for learning. And I think the reason why it's healthy is because there was nothing to do with the technology. And we're hoping that between our videos and then we have a huge software platform, that's what to give exercises and feedback to students, that will be a catalyst to really to use technology.
What's the difference between teaching online and teaching in the classroom?
The classroom management's a little bit easier. No, but I say that jokingly, but it's true. I mean, I get a huge luxury that when I make my videos, I pretend that the students are so enthralled by what I have to say that I can just imagine it. But what's good about that is it gives me energy. I mean, it's much harder to sit in front of a room full of 30 kids and you're not sure whether some are getting it, some are there, some are here. And what happens is that that energy gets conveyed in the videos, and when the students watch it, they can pause and repeat as many times as they want. I just got a letter from a kid who watched one video 30 times, and it took him 30 times to get the idea. And what he said is that there was no one on the planet he could have paid to watch a video, to tutor him that concept 30 times without judging it. And I think that's what students really like.
You do have a nonprofit. You're out there in the universe of cyberspace. But are any of the educational systems in this country, the districts either at the local or state level, coming to you and say, how can we strengthen the relationship between what we need and what you do?
Yeah, so we started some pilots last year, just almost on a whim, and it's gotten pretty exciting. Some of the local schools in the Bay Area, they said, what would you do if you could do anything with a fifth grade classroom? We said we'd have every student working at their own pace, watching videos, doing the self-paced exercises, only moving forward once they've mastered concepts. Right now, you get a B or a C on a topic. That's fine. You passed, even though you don't know 10 or 20% of the material, and then you move on to more difficult topics. So we're saying everyone at their own pace, master concepts first, and then what happens to the teachers is that they get all of this data. Who's working on what videos are they watching, what exercises are they doing, and so the teacher no longer has to give these one-size-fits-all lectures. The teacher can actually get the data and say, hey, look, Tom's having trouble with negative numbers. Everyone else is working at their own pace. Let me sit down next to Tom and actually have a one-on-one intervention with Tom. So what we found in these classrooms, it's been pretty crazy, is that before, maybe 10% of a teacher's time was spent on that really deep one-on-one mentorship. Now it's 90% of their time. So the what we consider to be the relevant metric, which is student to time with the teacher ratio, that's gone through the roof.
The people in their 40s and 50s, or my age, and I'm a grandparent at this age, do we tend to underestimate the passions and the almost affinity that young people now coming of age with all this technology around them have for using that technology and the expectations that they have for it?
No, I mean, it surprised me. I wouldn't have thought when I started this, I wouldn't have thought when I made videos on sine, cosine, or L'Hopital's rule that they would become this mainstream thing. But clearly there's this hunger for it. And but the surprising thing, it isn't just a younger generation. We have 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. I got a letter from a grandmother who said that it was her life dream to learn calculus. Who knew? And she started working on it. So it's really across generations.
Do you complement what you do online with conventional textbooks or math books or offer references?
Well, it's an interesting. I think there'll always be a role for books, but textbooks right now do two things. The text tries to teach you something. It's sometimes hard to read, and then the exercise try to give you practice. And we think that on-demand video is often better than the text that you see in a lot of textbooks, and that kind of immediate feedback, self-paced learning with data and analytics, and you get the steps of every problem, and it's kind of like a video game, that's better than every other answer in the back of the book. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to the textbook world.
What have you learned, if anything, at this point, and I know it's empirical evidence probably, about whether some of us are hardwired to do math and others of us, like me, are hardwired to do other things? I mean, people ask me how I got to be a journalist, and I say Algebra 2. I mean,
that's pretty good. No, the amazing thing that we've started seeing in these pilots in these classrooms is when you let every kid work at their own pace, right when you start off, you do see what we traditionally see. Some of the kids race ahead, and those are the kids that we all think are going to be nuclear physicists and whatever else. And some of the kids take a little bit longer on one concept to another. In a traditional model, you would say, okay, those kids are meant to be scientists and engineers. These kids, maybe they'll become journalists, or which isn't so bad. But what we've seen is if you let them work at their own pace, some of those kids who are spending a little extra time on negative numbers or exponents, you give them that extra time, as soon as they get that, some of them just race ahead. And so what we're seeing in our data in the classrooms is when we're not grouping kids based on early assessment, that every week there's a new leader. And some of the kids that 2-3 weeks ago you would have said were slow or below average, a week or two or a month later, they're the best kid in the class. And so what we're seeing is that maybe we're just discounting kids too early, and that we're assessing them at the wrong times, and we're just it's kind of a predetermined future if you do it that way.
How did we lose our way in this country when it came to science education? How did we lose our way when it comes to science education in this country? When I was a younger guy, I mean, the Russians were beating us into space, so a lot of people went into engineering, went into sciences. The space race helped accelerate all of that. But then we lost our way, it seems to me, in the last part of the 20th century.
You know, I think it's just been bad branding. I think, you know, it's funny because science and engineering are fundamentally creative professions. I mean, engineering, the word engineering is to build things that have never been built before. And the way it's shown and the way and all of the hoops that you have to jump through your education make it look like it's a non-creative field. But when you actually get into the real world, it is a very creative field. So I think the real thing to get more kids engaged is to show them that, one, just the math and the science itself is beautiful, and it tells us more about the universe, or as much about the universe as philosophy or anything else. It really is a form of philosophy. And not only that, but the end point you're going to isn't a boring job. It is a creative job. It is redefining what people's experiences are. And I think if you view it that way, I think there will be a lot more people who want to get into it.
I think of cyberspace as the new second Big Bang. We're creating this new universe out there, just like we did with physical first bang. And one of the things that's happening is that we're watching all these planets. Which one's going to drip too close to the sun? Which ones are going to form together and form new life forms? As you look at your model, which has been successful, have you already begun to think, how can we expand that model to other areas?
Yeah, we've already thought about it. And so, you know, we have the videos I do right now, and then we have this whole software platform. And I think the interesting thing is we're going to start branching off from mathematics into, our videos already cover other things in biology and economics and all the rest, but our exercise platform start to do economics, physics, chemistry, and then start to think about how can we do the humanities? How can we give people a basic scaffold of, say, American history? And then I think it'll be really interesting to see how we can do things like creative writing, where people are doing projects, and maybe they can peer review each other's essays and things like that. And so I think there's a whole universe that we're just beginning to explore.
Well, we'll look forward to your exploration. Sal, thank you very much from the Khan Academy.
Thank you.
And you and I will get together later and see if we can improve my math skills. Thank you.